With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show Podcast, Hour 3.
Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The Eric Erickson Show across the nation. The phone number is 877-972-7425. 973-7425. Sorry. Distracted here as a fly lands on my head. I don't know how it got in the studio, but nonetheless, we move on. You can be a part of the program, 877-973-7425. Also, if you want to join me at a gun range at the end of October to sample some bourbons, you can get a voucher. You can come early and shoot guns or get a voucher and come back after you've been drinking because I don't want you shooting guns after. The lawyers aren't happy with that idea. You can come hang out with me. It's going to be at the Governor's Gun Club. It's in Kennesaw, Georgia, October 28th from 5 to 9. I'm going to bring in some folks, have some conversations, take questions from the crowd about the state of the election as we head into the midterms, which will be coming up a week or so later. So 2 weeks later, you can text the word bourbon to 33777 and hang out with me. Tickets on sale now. I want to talk to you about a somewhat outrageous story. Can you imagine a New York Times reporter ever suggesting any Democratic candidate isn't black enough? You can't, can you? Suggesting that a black man isn't black enough. I can't think of any Democrat they would ever do that to. Even, frankly, Barack Obama, who was of mixed race, who grew up among a privileged elite at a rich school in Hawaii. You're not going to have the New York Times say, well, he's not black enough. But they've done that to Herschel Walker down in Georgia as they start to get feeling like maybe he could win. And by the way, he could. Warnock in Georgia is up in the polls. The polling average has gone from basically a tied race to Warnock being a little bit up. I really think it's that ad. For those of you not in Georgia, Raphael Warnock has some fantastic ads. He's probably got the best ads of any politician in America right now. But one of the attack ads against Herschel Walker is the video clip of his ex-wife in a Nightline interview talking about Herschel Walker abusing her, putting a gun to her head, threatening to kill her. It was done with Herschel Walker as part of a interview on mental health and overcoming his struggles. Doesn't matter. The ad's drawing blood, and no response has been forthcoming from the Walker campaign. When asked about it, he says, let he who has no sin cast the first stone. Well, the stone's been cast, buddy. You got to respond. But the New York Times isn't satisfied. The New York Times sent a white reporter from California to Georgia to make an argument in the pages of the New York Times that Herschel Walker is not black enough. The headline, "The Racial Divide Herschel Walker Couldn't Outrun." The subheading, "As a teenage football prodigy, Mr. Walker was pressed to join a fight for civil rights in his hometown. His decision echoes decades later." And he goes to Wrightsville, Georgia. Now, for those of you who don't know where Wrightsville, Georgia is, Wrightsville as we say around here, Wrightsville is 61 miles from where I live. It is in southeast Georgia, middle Georgia, a little southeast. It's north of Dublin, Georgia. I've been through Wrightsville as a lawyer. There's not much there. You got the Dairy Queen and a Circle K. You got the Cornbread Cafe. You got Johnson County High School. You got the pizza place. You got a Dollar General. The Cattle Bay Restaurant. North of the city is the Johnson County Country Club. You look on a map, you'll see a lot of dark roads. It's kind of poor county. The race for a critical Senate seat was on full motion by midsummer, but there were just a few Herschel Walker campaign signs sprinkled around his hometown. They were planted in front of big homes with big yards and a downtown storefront window near the sidewalk by the Dairy Queen. There were two on the corner by the Johnson County Courthouse near a Confederate memorial. Aha! The support appeared randomly scattered, but people in Wrightsville saw a dot-to-dot drawing of a racial divide that shaped Wrightsville for generations, and it's now shaping a critical political race with national implications. All those campaign materials were in the white community, says Curtis Dixon, who is black and who taught and coached Walker, a Republican, in the late 1970s when he was a high school football prodigy. The only other house that has a Herschel Walker poster is his family. It may not be an exaggeration in a predominantly black neighborhood of small homes about a block from where Mr. Walker went to high school. 9 people, including a man who said he was Mr. Walker's cousin, gathered on a steamy Saturday in July to eat and talk in the shade. No one planned to vote for Mr. Walker. Most scoffed at the thought. Around the corner, a retired teacher named Alice Pierce said nice things about his mother and family, as most people do, but I'm not going to vote for him, I'll be honest with you, she said. Fearful of repercussions in a small town and out of respect for members of the family who still live there, many spoke only on the condition of anonymity. One woman, taking a break from mowing her lawn, said Mr. Walker would be in over his head as mayor of Wrightsville. He's famous to some people because of football, but he's just Herschel Walker to me. Really? Y'all got that? Black voters not voting for a black candidate who is a Republican is not something new. Black voters tend to vote Democrat. And it is actually the racism of the New York Times for them to say, well, black voters are not voting for this black guy. He's not black enough. No, he's not Democrat enough. But the New York Times can't handle it that way. They got to make a race issue out of it. And they used this quote from his old teacher. Herschel's not getting the black vote because Herschel forgot where he came from. He's not part of the black community. Do you have this? Herschel Walker isn't part of the black community. That's what his old teacher says. And what he really means is that Herschel Walker's not a Democrat because in the South, overwhelmingly black voters vote for Democratic candidates, unless their name is Stacey Abrams. They don't like her, and still a majority will vote for her. And they try to weave this story that back in the day, Herschel Walker didn't participate in civil rights rallies. He was getting out of town. He was going to go to the football school. He was going to be a football star, and he didn't participate with them, and they all feel betrayed. Can you imagine the New York Times sending a white reporter somewhere to declare a black Democrat isn't black enough? That's what they're doing here. This is the end of this story. Why has he not used his fame, fortune, and now his political standing to raise the voices of those he left behind, they ask. It is a question raised in 1980, echoing in 2022. One ex-teammate, Tommy Jenkins, said the answer to the question was once very simple. Mr. Jenkins was among the black track athletes who boycotted the team and participated in the protests. A lot of people criticized him for not standing up, but I understood why Herschel didn't do it, said Mr. Jenkins, a black Wrightsville resident who intends to vote for Mr. Walker. It would have ruined his career. This is actually fascinating, not because of what it tells you about a black candidate running as a Republican, but about the New York Times and its white staff who are deeply offended at the idea of a black man running as a Republican. By the way, you should know, Herschel Walker's not alone in this. publications like the New York Times vilified Tim Scott. Tim Scott is a black senator. For a time, he was the only black senator, and it bugged the left to no end that he was a Republican. Tim Scott's not only a black Republican senator from South Carolina, but he got his start in Congress representing the 1st Congressional District in South Carolina. That's notable because the 1st Congressional District is where Fort Sumter is, where the first shots of the Civil War were fired. And that area of the country was willing to send a black man as a Republican to Congress. And the left was furious, and they tried to delegitimize Tim Scott's story. To this day, you will find folks like the New York Times writing stories that Tim Scott's story isn't all there is. In fact, there was one that came out a while back when Tim Scott's book came out. And they suggested, well, actually, his family had it easy compared to authentic black people in South Carolina who are Democrats. They do this every time. There's almost a template at the New York Times now. Black man thinking for himself, voting Republican, attack, attack, attack. Can't have that. It's why they hate Clarence Thomas. They despise Clarence Thomas because Clarence Thomas, they claim, is betraying black people. And every single damn time they do these stories, what it actually is these people, whether it's Herschel Walker or Tim Scott or Clarence Thomas, you name it, what it is they're not in line with the Democratic Party. And because most black voters vote Democrat, they get to argue that actually they're not in line with black voters. They are somehow betraying their race. It seems to me that what the New York Times is actually saying is thinking for yourself and marching to the beat of your own drummer is class and race betrayal, as opposed to being a good thing where you get to think for yourself. They don't like that. Again, can you imagine the New York Times writing this about Barack Obama, who grew up in Hawaii, went to a very prestigious private school, moved abroad, had a life unlike most black Americans? They would never do that to Barack Obama. Or Kamala Harris, or Stacey Abrams, or Raphael Warnock. But it's easy pickings. Georgia's population is 1/3 black, but Mr. Walker's campaign staff is almost entirely white, as are the crowds that gather to watch him. That's another actual quote in this piece. This is the New York Times trying to essentially say Herschel Walker is a white man in blackface, because Herschel Walker is a Republican. And they don't like the fact that Herschel Walker is a Republican. He's going to get some black votes, but he's not going to get the majority of them because he's a Republican, not because he's some sort of race traitor, as the New York Times would have you believe. Sending a white reporter from California to Georgia to declare Herschel Walker not black enough is exactly what the New York Times does these days. It is an organization on its front page, still gives you the news of the day. But every page further inside the New York Times descends further into left-wing racism and madness. This is an absolutely racist piece. This is absolutely racism. To declare that Herschel Walker, because of his views and beliefs, isn't black enough. To declare that Herschel Walker isn't black enough because his campaign staff is white and people he's getting support from are white people. Are those white people? Are they not racist? I mean, how is this? This is part of the horror of the New York Times here. They can't handle that Herschel Walker's getting white support as a black man. Don't you know those whites in Georgia? They're not supposed to vote for a black man. They did this to Herman Cain as well. When Herman Cain ran for the Senate in Georgia and then for president, Herman Cain wasn't black enough, because he was running as a tax-cutting Republican who was backed by white people. White guys at the New York Times telling us what black people can and cannot do might be the height of racist paternalism in America. And now they're doing it to a football star who left his hometown and made it big under the lights. And they despise it because he dares to be a Republican. So winter is coming, and I got to tell you, I love the weight of the Boll and Branch sheets. I like them in the summer when it's hot and you don't want a lot of covers on you, but in the wintertime, they're just the perfect weight, the perfect, I don't know, smoothness. They're 100% organic cotton threads. They've got super softness. They get softer every time you wash them. They're just, the drape when you're laying down and stuff, they're just perfect sheets. I love them. I am effusive with my praise for Boll and Branch, and I'm delighted to have them as an advertiser. Look, they're made from the highest quality threads. They got superior softness. They got over 25,000 rave customer reviews and counting. I'm one of them. The quality you can tell is great. They hold up well after all the washes I've put them through, and they just get softer. It doesn't matter what the thread count is if the fiber sucks, and you can tell they put a lot of great detail into the fibers they use. And look, Boll and Branch gives you a 30-night risk-free trial with free shipping, returns on all orders. You're going to feel the difference. You're not going to want to send them back. The first 100% organic, fair trade, certified bedding company ever. They use 90% less water than conventional production, zero pesticides, other toxic chemicals. They don't use them. It's just fantastic. Listen, I'm effusive with my praise. I love Boll and Branch. Try them for yourself. And again, you get a 30-night risk-free trial, free shipping, returns on all orders. Try the sheets that will make you fall for the coziest night sleep in the season where you want cozy sheets. 15% off your first set of sheets. Free shipping when you use promo code ERIC, E-R-I-C-K, at bollandbranch.com. That's Boll and Branch, B-O-L-L-A-N-D branch.com. The promo code is ERIC. Trust me, they're worth it. We got 5 bedrooms, 5 beds, Boll and Branch sheets on every bed. A whole lot of people have called in and asked my call screener a question. Why hasn't the Walker campaign responded to the Warnock ads about the ex-wife's allegations of abuse and wanting to kill a guy and the like? I have not talked to the Walker campaign. And by the way, Herschel will be on the program next week. My guess, looking at financial disclosures, is they don't have the money. So if you want him to mount a robust defense, you need to make a donation to the Walker campaign to be able to do so. They're running low on funds, it looks like. That's my guess as to why they haven't mounted. My understanding is they have a response, and it's a pretty good response from what I've heard, but it's a response that goes nowhere if you don't have the money to put it on TV. So that is an educated guess on my part looking at financial disclosures. The Warnock team has gobs of cash. The Walker team does not have. And, President Trump raised $99 million, said he was going to help these people, and hasn't spent a penny on Herschel Walker since he got the nomination. If Donald Trump wants to step up and write a check to the super PACs and the like to get Walker over the finish line, it would be good, but he hasn't done so yet. All right, to the phones. Tom, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I had last week, I had no questions whether Governor DeSantis or Senator Rubio would win here in Florida. That was before the hurricane hit. And when you look at the county, Collier, Lee, Charlotte, Manatee, Sarasota, Polk counties, those are the heart of the Republican Party here in the state of Florida. And with all the devastation and the displacement that's taken effect down there, a lot of them are transplants from other states and lack of housing, I have a real concern that both of those elections are going to be questionable. I mean, there's 1 million Republican voters on that southwest coast of Florida, and it would take a heck of absentee voting to get the people first where they sign up and then where they'll vote. And I think this is going to be a critical part of the campaign.
Yeah, look, on the downside of what DeSantis is dealing with is exactly that. It's a Republican area of the state hit. A lot of people displaced. A lot of people will not be able to move back into a house by Election Day because there is no house to move back into. But it's October 3rd. And the DeSantis team already has a really impressive ground game operation down there. And they have contingencies in place for things like this to deal with absentee balloting. So if you live in Florida, you should consider voting by absentee ballot. One of the upsides is that Florida Republicans actually trusts the absentee voting process way more than a lot of people do in other states, because DeSantis has affirmed the legitimacy of the absentee voting process down there. So Republicans in Florida tend to vote by absentee ballot at significant numbers already. They already know how to do it, and they're going to have to probably do it. Now, there will be polling locations set up for Election Day voting. There will be procedures in place, but at the same time, absentee voting is your friend. If you've been displaced, if you're listening to this and you can't get home to your polling location, or your polling location doesn't exist because it's been washed away by the storm, absentee balloting is the way to go. Don't be afraid to cast your vote by absentee ballot, but go on and do it right now. It reminds me, I got to get my absentee ballot in because I know I'll be at work on Election Day. So please, please, please get your absentee ballot in, if you can, in Florida. Don't be afraid to vote by absentee ballot. And DeSantis' team has an operation in place to try to work on this. So I would suggest any of you who have concerns reach out to his campaign, and they can help you get situated for your absentee ballot as well. When we come back, more of your phone calls. We got other stuff to talk about as well. 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, happy to hear from you and take your phone calls when we come back. And we got to talk about the crime wave. Yes, it's a big thing now. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I want to go back to the phones. Kermit is calling. Kermit, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Eric?
I'm good.
I'm calling about the North Carolina race between Bud and Beasley.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to your show quite often. We talk a lot about Georgia. We talk a lot about Pennsylvania. We skip right over North Carolina. So I need to see what your input is and where we stand. It's a really close race. Bud is underfinanced, I think. Very, very short on money. And he needs some help, and so much as we can give it on the radio, I'd sure like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and so I've had Ted, who's a friend, on the show, and I will tell you my assessment of that race, and it is that Democrats are starting to buzz in large part because Bud had been ahead in the polling averages pretty significantly. He'd been up by about 7.5 points back in May. He's now only up 1.5 points. The trend line has definitely been towards Sherry Beasley. But my guess, and the guess of both Democratic and Republican strategists, is that Bud probably keeps that seat. And the reason why is 2020. In that race, let me give you the polls. These are the polls from October 4th until Election Day. You had Cunningham up 6, up 2, up 10, up 5, up 4, up 4, up 2, up 1, up 1, up 6. Tie, 6, 4, 3, 1, 3, 3, 10, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 4. The polling average at the end of the race was Cunningham up 2.6% against Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis won by 1.6%. The moral of the story there being that most pollsters believe that in North Carolina, when the race is close, the Republicans have an advantage. And so if Bud is up 1.6, he's probably up 3 to 4. The Democrats want you to believe that actually there is a hidden Democratic bias now. The problem is that that's not typically the way it works. And this is probably helpful to understand. And Kermit, thank you for listening. Let me see if I can break this down for you. When pollsters talk about a polling bias to the Democrats, what they tend to mean are two things. One, in national polls, you tend to poll across the country and you may hit into urban areas where even the people who say they're Republican lean to the left. But also in state level polling in particular, there are a lot of people who just don't talk to pollsters on the right. So let's take North Carolina as a great example of this. Every poll in North Carolina in October of 2020 had Cal Cunningham beating Tom Tillis, and Tom Tillis won by 1.6%. The media buzz was that Tillis was going down, and it kind of surprised people that he won North Carolina. Ted Budd is up 1.6 points. Now, that he was up 7.5 points at the beginning of this year. It's 1.6 points. Sherry Beasley has trended up. The race is less than 5 weeks away, and there's probably a polling bias to the Democrats. Now, the Democrats are arguing that, well, actually, there are all these Democratic voters who aren't talking to pollsters. Here's the problem. Just based on real survey data and real data analysis, Democratic voters are more likely to talk to pollsters. Republican voters tend not to answer the phone, tend not to be on the list that get called, and also tend to be suspicious that the pollsters are probably feeding input to someone, and it's not really an anonymous poll, and they don't like to talk to them. A woman who is a Democrat, who is mad about abortion, is probably the number one person who wants to talk to a pollster. She's mad, and she's going to have her revenge, and she wants everybody to know it. And so she is talking to the pollsters. In fact, that could be the phenomenon in North Carolina that's causing Sherry Beasley to surge. Those voters are demanding, they're probably themselves proactively going to find the pollsters to say, I want you to know I'm voting for Sherry Beasley because of abortion. The Republicans, they're not talking to the pollsters. So the pollsters try their best to get as best of a sample as possible. A national survey is easier to get a sample than a state survey. A state survey is easier to get a sample than a congressional district survey. And a congressional district survey is easier to get than a local survey. The numbers of people you have to get, the numbers of people you have to interview. Here are the numbers right now. PPP, which is a Democratic firm, has Sherry Beasley up 1. The Trafalgar Group, which is Republican, has Budd up 3. East Carolina University has Budd up 3. Emerson College has Budd up 3. And Signal has a tie. Signal is a Republican pollster. Now, if we go back to the 2020 Senate race, let's see, you had Emerson College had Cunningham up 3. Emerson College now has Budd up 3. You had Eastern Carolina University had Cunningham up 1. They've now got Budd up 3. If they're oversampling Democrats, that means Budd's doing well. And the notable thing is the buzz. Now, there are always surprise races, and there are always sleeper races in campaigns. And this could be the surprise race. This could be the one that nobody saw. But the fact that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans nationally are really talking about this race suggests neither of them really believe the Republicans are going to lose it. There has been a shift in the conversation over the last couple of weeks. Some Democrats now suggesting abortion will carry the day. There's a Bloomberg story out that suggests because of the influx of tech workers from the West Coast and abortion among women and college-educated people moving to the Democratic Party, Sherry Beasley may pull off an upset. But when the dominant issues of the day favor the Republicans, North Carolina tends to favor Republicans, the polling tends to undercount Republicans, that suggests to me Ted Budd's going to win. I can be wrong. The polling could have corrected itself, and he could be on the verge of losing. I continue to say the trend lines do matter, and the trend lines had been a race where the Democrats had momentum in North Carolina. But if you look at the more recent trend lines at the end of September to beginning of October, the trend lines have shifted back to the GOP in North Carolina. So I think Ted Budd wins it. Am I going to stake my life on it? No, of course not. Things can change. Events change things. But when you've got a number of pollsters who have traditionally tended to oversample Democrats saying that Budd is ahead, I don't think they've changed their sampling dramatically enough to now suddenly oversample Republicans who are least likely to talk to pollsters, and they've still got Budd up. So I think that's good for him. And last point, and it's an echo, it's a reverberation of the key point. Neither Democrats nor Republicans are buzzing about Ted Budd being in trouble. Therefore, they have better polls than the public polls, and none of them see anything that suggests the Democrats are going to pick up the seat. Now, back to the phones, 877-973-7425. Tracy, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric, I just registered for the bourbon event at the end of this month. Thanks for that. Heads up. Look forward to seeing you there. What do you think it would take for the media, for journalists, for the news, to be objective or at least come more to the center? Paint that picture for us. What would it take?
Show up October 28th, Tracy, and I'll give you all the details. Thanks for calling.
You're funny.
Okay. This is actually a great question. It's the thing the media doesn't want. Competition. The more this is why they hate Fox News so much, because Fox News tends to cover stories the rest of the media doesn't. Like, for example, did you know neither CNN nor MSNBC covered the "Where's Jackie" comment from President Biden? Fox News covered it. The other networks didn't cover it. They don't like the competition. They're resentful of it. They don't like that Fox gets more coverage than they get. And they all tend to be in a bubble with the Democrats. Honestly, if I could run CNN for a day, I would make them move back to Atlanta, where they still had biases, but they were more likely to encounter people who didn't share those biases. And I think that would be one thing to help fix CNN, get it out of the New York, D.C. echo chamber. As far as the national media, though, if I'm going to be honest, this is going to hurt some friends of mine, their feelings. The conservative media that's out there that purports to compete with the mainstream media is largely garbage outside of Fox. The conservative newspapers look cheap. The conservative websites look cheap. The conservative TV stations, my gosh, OAN is just a poop festival on a daily basis of fringe conspiracy theorists. You got to be able to compete, provide competition, and that would shake up the media. Because here's the thing, and a lot of people, I can hear it in the voice right now, say, but Fox, you keep mentioning Fox, and it hasn't changed. They've got one network that competes against them. You've got ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the USA Today, Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post. The Wall Street Journal is kind of the anomaly, although a lot of its reporters lean to the left. Outside of the editorial page, it's not exactly conservative. There's got to be competition. You've got Fox versus everybody else. And the conservatives who have tried to compete have actually kind of produced some garbage products. And if you could raise the quality of the conservative competition and add to the conservative competition, it would force a lot of the media to change, because at the end of the day, there remains for most of the media profit motive. Why has the New York Times gone so far off the deep end? Now, keep in mind, the New York Times has always been liberal. I'm not saying they weren't. They've always been liberal. But they've headed in a far left, progressive, in-your-face way. I mean, for Pete's sakes, they've got a white reporter from California going to Georgia saying Herschel Walker's not black enough. Why are they doing that? The profit motive. The New York Times during the Trump era and so many of the other major media outlets started making so much money by hating on Trump and hating on Republicans that the national media believes that keeping those sorts of left-wing readers who have money, giving them money is the way to stay in business. So until someone comes along and disrupts that, they're not going to change. They have too much financial incentive to sit it out. They want liberals. They don't care about you and me. They claim that they do. The Washington Post just ditched Radley Balco. Now, I'm not a big fan of his, nor he of mine. He is one of those people who didn't like Donald Trump. He's very libertarian, socially liberal. But they ditched him because his pieces were, regardless of what you would think about him, fairly thoughtful pieces, even if I disagreed. They were long form, and the Washington Post is making money off the hate traffic that comes in from Jen Rubin saying stupid things on Twitter, getting people to click through to read her stuff. The Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, formerly of Amazon, and they are profiting off hate clicks. And when you have someone producing thoughtful pieces that may get both sides riled up, but they're thoughtful, in-depth pieces, they don't generate as much traffic. One of the downsides right now is that the left is able to generate a ton of traffic, a ton of click-throughs, and a ton of problems. And they've got to have the competition. They've got to be able to have a way for conservatives to be engaged online. One of the things conservatives have also done that I think is bad is they've largely ghettoized themselves. Now, in academia, yes, it's true, conservatives have been driven out. But within the media space, conservatives have marginalized themselves. There are conservatives I know. I'm actually texting with a conservative reporter of a major news outlet right now who got a start in the conservative space, is still conservative, tries to play it straight, and is a very good reporter. And I hear from people similarly situated, not from this guy, but from others, that yes, it is more and more difficult to work in these places, in large part because there is a bias against them already, but also conservatives say, well, I'm not going to go work at a place I'm hated. I'm going to go do my own thing. And so they wind up in places that are already predominated by conservatives and are increasingly then marginalized on their own. So it's a multifaceted, complicated process. But the bottom line, honestly, is there's got to be competition. You got to have competition. And until conservatives are willing to put up news sites that look just as credible as the New York Times, as opposed to, I'm not a big fan of the Washington Times website. I think it's a garbage website. Until you're willing to build sites that look like the Times, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, that look like a professional publication, you're going to keep getting written off and marginalized. You got to start there and have that competition. And then you got to build another news outlet like Fox News. And Newsmax is trying. News Nation is trying to play middle of the road. Newsmax is trying to be a Fox competitor. Stop competing with Fox. Go after CNN. Play it straight and have a conservative editorial bent, and I think you grow. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be a part of the program, and I am told that Eastern Carolina is actually East Carolina University, not Eastern Carolina University. The other one is Western Carolina University, not West Carolina University. May God have mercy on their souls. All right, East Carolina University's polling. It had the Democrat winning 2 years ago and the Republican one, and this year has the Republican winning. Maybe they've overcompensated, but I doubt it. I doubt it. Now, we must move on to other things. Portland, Oregon. That state has a Republican tied in the governor's race. Why? Dan McLaughlin, my friend Dan, has a piece about Portland, Oregon. Let me read you part of it. He's actually quoting from an ABC News affiliate. Neighbors are asking for answers in Northeast Portland. Residents woke up to tires punctured on vehicles parked on the street and in driveways. Portland police say they've confirmed at least 30 vehicles have been hit. It's a really good neighborhood, so we hate to see it, hate to hear it, said Dennis Breslin, another neighbor. Why would anyone go around town slashing tires, asked a kid named Luna. It's been crazy having to raise children and all the crime going on. Shootings, intersections getting shut down, tire slashings. It's a bit much, said Aaron Jones, another one of the neighborhood. Another story, after moving from Portland's Old Town to downtown, Wyatt Savage was hopeful the level of crime wouldn't be so severe. But the owner of Pallet Portland is now considering a move to escape the challenges. In 3 months, I've had 4 windows smashed. I've had somebody try and rip the front door off our gate off the hinges. It's been nonstop, Savage said. Savage says he's added tools in an effort to slow down break-ins like wooden boards and gates, but the business owner said the financial implications are getting hard. And another one, Portland police made 3 arrests after 4 homicides in a 24-hour period over the weekend. It's unsafe for everybody. Here's Susan Page on this issue from USA Today talking on Meet the Press.
Money has mattered, but what's the bigger story? That Republicans have caught up in some of these races, or that Democrats haven't fallen back?
You know, I think one thing that we found is abortion was an issue that really helped Democrats. Now crime is an issue that is increasingly helping Republicans, along with the issue of inflation. And one thing we've seen, for instance, in Wisconsin is that the Democratic candidate there, Mandela Barnes, has been caught up in the same phenomenon that some Republican candidates have found, which is things you said in the past, maybe when you weren't running for this particular office, have resurfaced and portray you as extreme.
Yeah, Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin has longtime advocated defunding the police. He's now denying it. Republicans have the receipts. They're rolling the tapes. Fetterman wanting murderers out of prison. Crime matters, and it could win the Republicans 2 races in Oregon as a result of it, including the governor's mansion there.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.